The mainstream media has gone so far left, even liberals are alarmed. But rather than self-reflect, the mainstream media is only doubling down. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. There's a good reason why a lot of you watching this channel do not like the mainstream media. That's not just because they're not as hilarious, insightful, dashing, and humble as yours truly. So, people who read and watch the mainstream media know that it's catering to the viewpoints of the radical left. Now, I know some of you might be turned off by me using the term radical left, especially because conservatives constantly keep bringing it up. But let's be fair and clear. I'm not saying that all liberals and all Democrats are radical leftists, but there are a lot on the left who are totally radical, and not in the fun way that 80s toys were totally radical. It's not just conservatives who are ringing the alarm. Even liberals are pointing this out. One of the most notable liberal critics is NPR veteran Uri Berliner. He blew the whistle on NPR earlier this month, exposing why his organization lost America's trust. According to Berliner, NPR doesn't reflect America. It actually reflects the distilled worldview of a very small segment of the U.S. population. More specifically, progressives and the radical left. It's the kind of people who are more focused on hurting Donald Trump and promoting left-wing orthodoxy than on having an open mind and trying to be objective. They are the ones contributing to the absence of viewpoint diversity at NPR.
We were kind of nerdy and really like to dig into things and understand the complexity of things. That I think that's evolved over the years into a much narrower kind of niche thinking, a group think that's really clustered around very selective progressive views that don't allow enough air, enough spaciousness to consider all kinds of perspectives.
They're so dogmatically progressive, they don't allow other opinions safe spaces? They've become what they hate. Once NPR heard Berliner's criticism, it began a period of self-reflection, checking its progressive bias. Just kidding. NPR suspended Berliner for 5 days without pay. They claimed it was for not getting approval for working for other outlets. They also accused him of spreading factual inaccuracies, which, if true, means he's perfect for the mainstream media. As a matter of fact, one prominent host at NPR said Berliner is the one who failed at viewpoint diversity since he didn't seek comment from anyone with a different perspective for his critical article. A former NPR employee and current executive producer of podcasts at Slate wrote on Slate that the real story behind NPR's problems isn't wokeness, but its abundance of caution when it comes to certain stories, like the Hunter Biden laptop story and the COVID lab leak theory. Because that's totally the problem with the radical left, they're just too cautious. They always think things completely through. Like decriminalizing drugs in Oregon. That was a well thought out plan that definitely didn't end up in utter failure. Others at NPR assumed the worst of Berliner's intentions. The radical left really takes criticism well, don't they? One even went so far as to accuse Berliner of setting up staffers of color as scapegoats, which is obviously not what he was doing. Berliner is all for diversity. He wants viewpoint diversity, the kind that doesn't depend on the color of your skin or what's between your legs. And of course, leftists hate that. Not everyone at NPR disagreed with Berliner, though. Former NPR ombudsman Jeffrey Dvorkin said Berliner wasn't wrong. Former managing editor at NPR Chuck Holmes even called Berliner brave. In the end, Berliner resigned from NPR in response. He also specifically pointed to NPR's new CEO, Catherine Marr, and the problems her leftist views have created. What's so problematic about her views, you say? Well, aside from her extensive history of supporting progressive woke causes, people like her go so far as to reject objective reality in order to spin whatever narratives suits them.
Perhaps for our most tricky disagreements, seeking the truth and seeking to convince others of the truth might not be the right place to start. In fact, our reverence for the truth might be a distraction that's getting in the way of finding common ground and getting things done.
She thinks reverence for the truth might be a distraction to getting things done? She is now leading a major news organization. I'll give you a minute to pick up your jaw off the floor. But remember, Maher is just a symptom of the problem of leftist ideology influencing the newsroom, not the problem itself. I'll tell you more after the break. Welcome back. The mainstream media's response to the NPR drama goes to show that they too have been hijacked by radical leftists, the kind who see truth as a political tool for pushing leftist agendas. We can see this in how they reacted to conservative coverage of the fallout. Of course, Berliner's criticism of NPR caught the attention of a lot of conservative media, and Trump especially. So mainstream media outlets were quick to point out how popular Berliner's commentary was among conservatives. Because if conservatives like something, it must be bad. Even if it's an anti-human trafficking movie. Human trafficking is bad? Clearly this is the work of QAnon. CNN says that Berliner's piece has been nothing short of a massive gift to the right. USA Today likewise brought up how Berliner's essay fuels conservative attacks on NPR. And NPR would have gotten away with it too, if it wasn't for that pesky truth. Don't look at the truth, everybody. It's just a distraction. Instead, look at these jangling keys. This is what's really important. So it's fair to say these journalists are more concerned with the political implications of the facts they report rather than simply presenting the truth. What's most important is whether the information will benefit or harm certain political figures or parties, and this is influencing their reporting. As the attacks on Berliner prove, radical leftists have taken over left-leaning newsrooms. NPR isn't alone. The New York Times fell victim as well. It became such a massive progressive echo chamber for leftists that even liberal employees were left wondering what happened to this once revered newspaper. Well-known writer Barry Weiss, who used to work at the New York Times, was one of the liberals who was affected by the leftist takeover. She quit the news outlet back in 2020, citing a hostile culture and lack of ideological diversity, which, as we now know, means she's a raging bigot. Wanting diversity is just a dog whistle for not wanting diversity. According to Weiss, intellectual curiosity, let alone risk-taking, is now a liability at the New York Times. And Barry Weiss wasn't the only casualty. Former New York Times editorial page editor James Bennett likewise resigned, partially because of the backlash he faced for publishing an op-ed written by Republican Senator Tom Cotton. That op-ed called for military force to protect lives and businesses in response to the chaotic riots that came after George Floyd's death. Considering how the New York Times was publishing op-eds that advocated for defunding the police and literally abolishing the police, you would think it's fair to give the other side of the debate a chance to speak their point of view. But no, that was too much, particularly for the left-wing activists in the New York Times newsroom. They adamantly opposed the op-ed, arguing that its message of encouraging more police would cause more harm and undermine the paper's commitment to safety. This aged pretty poorly because, as liberal cities soon found out, progressives' antidotes for crime and other societal problems didn't work out so well. Turns out that not punishing criminals and letting them go leads to more crime? Another former New York Times employee, Adam Rubenstein, confirms criticism of the New York Times bias. He said he was a heretic at the New York Times for not going along with his colleagues' radical leftist way of thinking, especially when it came to concerning themselves with whether information like the Hunter Biden laptop story would hurt Joe Biden and Democrats. These leftists are so blinded by ideology that when former CNN CEO Chris Licht said he wanted to hear from Republicans, they accused him of intentionally making news platforms like CNN objectively right-wing. I don't think they know what objectivity means. The problem is with this relentless push left, even if you're a liberal, sooner or later the radical left will start to label you as right-wing for things that would have just been common sense 20 years ago. The message being pushed is that objectivity in journalism is misleading and dangerous. I don't think valuing objectivity in the media makes you a fascist. Faith in the mainstream media is at an all-time low. But here at America Uncovered, we do our best to present the facts and let you draw your own conclusions. We have no stake in who benefits from the truth. But I can't afford to keep making this show without your support. On the crowdfunding website, patreon.com/America Uncovered. All it takes is $1 an episode. I usually make about 12 episodes a month, but if that's too much for you, you can always set a monthly limit. You can help me continue to uncover America for just $1 a month. Just click on this orange button to support the show. And here's a video I want to show you from my new show, Deep Thoughts While Gaming, where I recreate communist China in the game Dwarf Fortress. Click here to see it and let me know what you think. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.